I used to think that the reason I couldn't stop overeating was because I lacked discipline. I genuinely believed that that was the reason everyone around me seemed to be able to stop at 2 cookies, whereas I really struggled not to scoff the whole damn pack. So I would do things like ban myself from carbs, hide foods that I didn't feel in control around, hoping this would break my bad habits. But it turns out that by being more strict on myself, I was making the chances of success even less likely. Because while it worked in the short term, it was never something I could sustain for very long. And so I wasted years in this cycle. A few days of being good, eating clean, followed by a few days of the floodgates opening and just eating whatever I wanted to. And it felt incredibly frustrating to feel like I was putting so much effort in, but never seeing any changes to my physique. But my approach completely changed when I discovered the science of behavior change. I did a ton of reading, I listened to podcasts, I worked with a coach, and I finally started to understand the actual reasons that I was so prone to overeating, which meant I was able to tackle the root cause rather than just trying to be more good. So if you feel like you're someone who just doesn't have enough discipline or control around your eating habits, and weight loss as a result feels impossible, I have good news for you. There are 3 distinct reasons that people tend to overeat, and none of them come down to your lack of self-control. And once you understand these 3 reasons and put the matching solutions in place, you're going to find it so much easier to stay consistent with your eating habits and therefore achieve long-lasting weight loss. So if you watch this video, you're basically going to discover exactly what I discovered and save yourself years and years of wasted efforts. And by the way, I'd really recommend downloading my free guide to defeating overeating, which basically covers everything I'm going to take you through in this video in a little bit more detail and with a checklist so you can implement your learnings with ease. Click the link below to access that and that will be in your inbox in moments. Oh, and one more thing before we get into it. If you appreciate no nonsense, evidence-based fat loss advice that will help you achieve your goals while still enjoying your life, then do make sure you subscribe to my channel because I'm dropping weekly videos just like this, which should make getting into the shape of your life just feel so much more doable. All right, let's get into it. So the first reason that causes overeating is physical restriction. In essence, the less you eat, the more likely you are to end up overeating. So if you're frequently choosing lower calorie meals that don't fill you up or going long periods of time without eating, then of course you're going to be way more prone to overeating later on. Your body is always striving for homeostasis, right? Which is basically to be balanced. So your body wants to consume enough food to match your energy expenditure. Meaning if you're undereating, your body's going to be like, hang on, do we have enough energy right now? Are we getting enough energy into our system to fuel those important internal bodily processes such as hormone production, brain function, immune function? And this is nothing more than a simple survival mechanism. So basically when you're low on food, your brain goes into, oh shit, we need more energy into our system mode. So when Sandra from work brings out a plate of cookies, how in the world are you ever meant to have enough discipline to say no? Like, you are ravenous, you're underfueled. It's a completely normal biological response to want to eat all the cookies. In that moment, your body is actually trying to protect you, not to sabotage you. So it's important to understand that, but you're probably wondering, okay, what is the solution? So let me tell you. You need to introduce more consistency into your eating habits. This might seem a little bit counterintuitive if your goal is fat loss, but I would suggest aiming to eat every 2 to 4 hours whilst you're awake, rather than trying to go long stretches without eating food. The data suggests that those who eat at more regular intervals tend to be able to stay more consistent and therefore get better results. And on top of this, trying to keep your meal times fairly similar day to day can massively help in keeping your hunger levels more stable. So these 2 things are key because overeating so often happens when you let yourself get too hungry. So a simple structure to follow could be breakfast, lunch, little snack, dinner, another little snack. And on top of this, it's also important to make sure that you are actually building meals that will fill you up. So many people on a fat loss journey try to keep their meals as small and low calorie as possible, but this almost always backfires. Instead, what we want to do is eat as much food as possible while staying in a deficit. So an easy structure here is to aim for a palm of protein, a thumb of healthy fats, a fist of complex carbs, and for a third of your plate to consist of fruit and or veg. That way you have a super satiating, balanced, nutritious meal. And when that is the case, you're going to be much less likely to want to pick later on. I'd also strongly suggest tracking your calories for at least a short period of time to help you implement the above, but while still sticking to a calorie target that aligns with being in a deficit and therefore getting sustainable fat loss results. And be sure to check out my YouTube video on how to set your calories so that they actually work for both your goals and your lifestyle too, which is so important. And now moving on to the second reason that you are likely to overeat. And that is because you're setting unrealistic rules. Most people think that in order to lose weight, they need to create a set of restrictive food rules to follow, such as only allowing certain foods at certain times, ditching carbs, or labeling certain foods as good or certain foods as bad. But the problem here is when you tell yourself you can't have a certain food, you're kind of gonna probably want it more. And when you do inevitably eventually give in and have that food, it feels so much harder to stop at the point where you're full and no longer getting any joy from that food, because the way that you have thought about that food leading up to that moment makes it feel like a rare opportunity, a novelty. And that is exactly why you may end up feeling pretty out of control around certain foods, even if you are otherwise a pretty disciplined person, because you're no longer able to view that food in a neutral way and eat based on hunger and satisfaction. Instead, you start eating for that dopamine rush that comes with bending the rules and giving in to something that feels like a rebellious treat. So the solution, and again, this might feel a little bit counterintuitive if the goal is fat loss, but I would suggest that you give yourself unconditional permission to eat all foods. That means no longer labeling foods as good or bad, and no longer telling yourself that certain foods are off limits. Because when you remove these food rules, the foods themselves lose that power that they had over you. And then you can make decisions based on your hunger levels, what you feel like your body needs, what's going to bring you a lot of joy, because that's exactly what a balanced diet is based off. So when you shift your focus from restriction to inclusion, and instead of constantly thinking about what to cut out or avoid, you look at what you can add into your diet to build meals that actually satisfy you, you neutralize food and you're far less likely to feel out of control around it, meaning you'll be able to eat in a more balanced way that honors balance, satiety, and enjoyment. Because it's not actually that enjoyable, is it, when you're just scoffing cookies for the sake of it? And the final reason that you may well overeat, and this is such a common one, is because you emotionally rely on food. Now, I firstly want to clarify that food isn't just fuel. It does indeed provide comfort and joy, but it does become a little bit problematic when that is your only way of dealing with certain emotions like boredom or stress or sadness. If you don't have other ways to switch off or meet those needs, it makes sense that food is going to become something that you emotionally rely on, which is super common, by the way. It's not something to feel guilty about, but it's definitely something that we want to become aware of so that we can change. So what's the solution here? Well, it's really important that you actually take a little bit of time to figure out what helps you switch off and deal with certain emotions that isn't food. What do you enjoy? When are you most relaxed? What helps you unwind after a stressful day? If food is the answer to most of those, then of course you're going to keep turning to it, and of course you're always going to struggle to get results. So we need to come up with some other options. This is where I would suggest that you create an emotional toolkit, a list of things that can soothe you and help you manage these inevitable emotions that don't involve eating. That could be taking a short walk, calling a friend, having a calming chamomile tea, taking a bath, watching your favorite show. Write these options down, the ones that actually work for you, and then start actively implementing them into your week in response to those emotions that you previously would have turned to food for, and see if they help. And you might find that some work much better than others, in which case they would of course be the ones to take forward. Because by the way, your emotional toolkit absolutely isn't set in stone. You can definitely make changes as you go along. Embrace that sense of trial and error until you find the approach that works best for you. So I hope this video has helped you understand the 3 likely reasons behind your overeating habits, as well as how you can tackle them. But I do just want to emphasize that overeating absolutely isn't something that you're going to fix overnight. It does take time, especially if it's something that you've struggled with for years now. And very often a bit of guidance too, not just putting a generic plan in place and hoping for the best, because I'm sure a lot of what I've covered today are things that you have heard of or you're familiar with anyway. And this just emphasizes that it's very often not a lack of knowledge that's the issue. The gap is actually in applying it to your daily life, especially when things get hectic or stressful. And that's where having support makes a huge difference. Someone to point out what you might be missing, keep you on track, and help you navigate the moments where you'd usually fall back into your old habits. And if you're after some help with that, rather than continuing the yo-yo cycle for countless more years, I would love for you to reach out. This is what I do day in, day out. This is my bread and butter. Since becoming an online coach, I've helped over 600 women lose weight in a way that still allows them to enjoy what's important to them in life. So if you're ready to make the changes needed to improve your quality of life and finally make fat loss feel a lot easier, then click the link below to apply for coaching. We'll have a little chat and see if it's for you. And if you're not quite ready for that just yet, then no worries at all, but do at least make sure you download my free guide to defeating overeating. Click the link below to access that, so you at least have everything I've taken you through today written down so you can go back through it, and also implement the daily checklist, which will just put you in the best possible position to achieve sustainable fat loss. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.